Hello, our video today is about summer squash. There's actually two main categories of squash. There's summer squash and winter squash. Summer squash includes varieties such as zucchini and yellow squash, and they make sort of a bushing structure, and that's what this is. This is zucchini, and behind me is a yellow squash plant. There's also winter squash that's more of a vining squash. Winter squash varieties include acorn and butternut squash. Now, you want to plant your summer squash in the spring after the danger of frost has passed, and so that's going to be after the vernal equinox. And you can plant your squash a little bit later too, because squash likes warmer weather. Okay, I'd like to show you my method that I like to use for planting my summer squash. I like to create these large mounds. I call it the mound method. So I create these large mounds of humus-rich soil, and it's about 1 foot tall, and I space these mounds about 2 feet apart, and then I space the rows between them 30 inches to 3 feet apart because my squash is going to spread. Now this mound system, it helps support the plant the way the squash likes to grow and come out like this, and also it creates a warmer environment for the seeds to germinate in. This little raised hill will get a little warmer than the soil around it. So here's how I plant them. Basically, well, I pound my mound with my hand to kind of firm it up, and I make a little bowl on top. I just kind of scoop this out a little bit. This is where my seeds are going to go, and this will help hold the water that are around the seeds. And here are squash seeds. They're just small, flat, kind of oval seeds. And I plant 2 or 3 seeds to my mound, just in case, or you can plant more if you want, just so you thin them out later on. I plant a little more just in case an insect gets my plants, so I'm more likely to have one plant that the insects don't eat. So I have my squash seeds planted in the little bowl that I've created. And then I cover it with about 1/2 inch of soil, and I have this nicer kind of potting soil here where the seeds are, so it's a real nice soil for them. Okay, now they're planted, and I still have a teeny weeny bit of a little bowl left there that'll help hold water that'll go down to the seeds. And now when I want to water this mound after I've planted it, so I'm going to gently mist it, so that it helps keep the form of my mound, and then my mound will pretty much be set in this form after I water it for the first time. And of course I want to put water on my seeds. And then after about 5 to 8 days, your seedlings are going to appear. And after only about 6 weeks, the first flowers will emerge on your squash plant. And here are some of the squash flowers on our plant. Now, squash makes male and female flowers on the same plant. So basically they make the flowers apart from each other, and then they're pollinated by bees. So a bee will get in the male flower, and then he'll go down to the female flower and pollinate it. And you can also help out this process if you don't see very many bees around your place by using a little paintbrush and dipping it into the male flower, and then dipping it deep into the female flower and kind of whirling the brush around. So what is the difference between the male and female flowers on your squash plant? This is a male flower. The male flowers usually have the very long stems, and they're pretty straight down here at the bottom. Now the female flower will have like a 1/2 inch bulge down here at the bottom. Obviously this is a male flower, but because the female flower, that's an ovary when it has that bulge down there at the bottom. And it looks like I pretty much have male flowers all over this plant right now, and that's pretty common early in the season to just have lots of male flowers. So a lot of beginning gardeners, and only the female flowers turn into squash. The male flowers will fall off after a time. And this really distresses a lot of beginning gardeners because they notice that not all of their squash flowers are turning into squash. But that's just nature. That's just shedding off of the male flowers. One thing you can do, you can actually eat squash blooms. So if you have too many male squash blooms, you can actually cut them off and eat them. And what you want to do is you want to, the squash flowers open in the morning, like obviously it's morning right now or this flower wouldn't be open. But in the late afternoon, the flowers close back up again until night. And so if you want to pick squash flowers, the squash blooms to eat, you want to pick them in the afternoon once they're closed again. And to fry up your squash blooms, you simply dip them in a very thin solution of milk with a little flour and fry them like you would fry potatoes. And Southerners really like their fried squash blooms. So, okay, pretty soon too you can harvest. You can harvest your squash. It's good to harvest it when it's about 6 to 8 inches long. This yellow squash is ready to harvest. Oh my goodness, I have a zucchini over there that's huge. It snuck up on me. So I definitely need to harvest that too. You want to use a knife that's just a smooth blade, not serrated. And when you harvest your squash, you want to cut the stem away from the main squash vine so you don't slip and damage the main squash vine. And you don't want to pull your squash, so just gently cut it. Okay, just like that. Oh, that's a nice squash. Okay, let me get this giant zucchini over here too. Oh my goodness, this is my zucchini. It kind of snuck up on me. Zucchini really grow fast. You don't want to, you want to eat your squash, or you want to pick it when it's about, like I said, 6 to 8 inches long. The longer it gets, the harder it gets, and the more seedy it gets. This one's still edible and good, but really if they get much longer than this, they're really not very yummy at all. So, some of the dishes you can make of squash are you can saute yellow or zucchini squash with garlic and different herbs such as basil, thyme, and rosemary. And of course you can also make zucchini bread. That's always a classic. And okay, another thing about squash, you want to watch out for pests on your squash. And the main, to look for pests, come out in your squash and divide your leaves and kind of look down to the central stalks, because you will find, that's when you will see squash bugs. Here is a squash bug. Some people also call it a stink bug because it emits a nasty smell when it's squished. If you find a squash bug, you want to hand remove it. You might wear some gloves because, again, you don't want your hands to have that bad smell on them. If you're having trouble catching the stink bug, a trick you can use is to actually put a board under your squash plant and leave a little dugout in the earth right underneath it, like at least a ½ inch. Then come out the next morning and the squash bugs will all be gathered under the board, and you can get to all of them at once. Also, you want to look periodically for squash bug eggs. Oh my goodness, I just found some. Okay, here are squash bug eggs. Right there. I don't know if you can see them. There they are. These are squash bug eggs right here. They're red-brown eggs. If you find these, you want to remove them as soon as possible. Just put a little bowl under them and scrape them off. You can just scrape them with your fingernail. I removed a squash bug from here about 2 days ago. Obviously he had already done some of his bad work. So, good luck to you on your squash harvest.